Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast, episode 106. I am your host, Perrysburg resident Kim Newlove. The Perrysburg Podcast is a resource for Perrysburg residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. Our website is perrysburgpodcast.com. We're talking about taxes today. Steve Bronder is the income tax commissioner for the city of Perrysburg. So, in this episode, Steve talks about his role and how his office, the city's income tax division, helps City of Perrysburg residents. He also gives insights into the four tax jurisdictions that affect City of Perrysburg residents: federal, state, school district, and municipal income taxes. We also talk about the city's income tax rate, some of the services that our tax dollars fund, and more. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Steve Bronder. Hi, Steve. Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast.
Well, thank you.
It's good to have you with me today. I'd love it so much if you could introduce yourself and tell me what it is that you do for the city of Perrysburg.
Sure. My name is Steve Bronder, and I am the income tax commissioner for the city of Perrysburg. I've actually been in that role for 14 years now, and the municipal income tax is administered by the city of Perrysburg internally. And so it is my responsibility to basically collect the income tax and enforce the income tax ordinance for residents and taxpayers for the city of Perrysburg.
Okay, thank you for the important work you do. And how stressful is your job around April 15th?
It can be very stressful. There's a lot of activity going on in the office at that time. I usually refer to the month of April as our busy season, and it's not just the first 2 weeks of April. The first 2 weeks of April are busy from the standpoint of our customer service side of the office, and that includes the email traffic that we're responding to, our phone calls. We do have a customer counter where residents can come in and ask questions, get assistance. And so we have a lot of customer service side of things up front that first 2 weeks of April. Then the second 2 weeks of April is lower on the customer service side of things, but there's an awful lot of material that we need to digest. So all of the tax returns that we've received, all of the payments that we received. And so now there's going to be another busy season for the next couple of weeks where we are depositing checks, posting payments, processing returns. So I refer to our month of April as the busy season. First 2 weeks, very much heavily involved on the customer service side. Then on the last 2 weeks, all process oriented.
Got it. Okay. I figured it was a busy season for you in April, but for us who are trying to get our taxes done, it's busy for us leading up to that. I didn't think about how it would be for you after April 15th, where you've received countless envelopes and you must now process them.
Yes, exactly.
Yep,
So,
I got
and
it.
that doesn't mean that the rest of the months of the year are inactive. We do have several due dates throughout the year for whether it's quarterly estimated tax payments. We have employer groups in the city of Perrysburg that do payroll withholdings, and so on an annual basis, we have to reconcile the withholding accounts, which requires a lot of data entry and processing, as well as then the monies that are coming through on a monthly or quarterly basis from the withholding accounts as well. So, depending upon the time of the year, there will be a certain emphasis on different areas of or different segments of the whole municipal income tax.
Sounds like you're busy year round.
Busier in certain times, but yes, we do have activity throughout the year.
Okay. For anybody listening to this that thinks that Steve just puts his feet up on the desk and leans back after the month of April, it's not true.
No.
Myth busted.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, let's go kind of to a very basic question. What is income tax, anyways? Because I know that we've got sales tax, property tax, and income tax. What specifically is income tax?
So, income tax is a tax that is levied on an individual's income. And so, most of us, regardless of maybe where we're from, are accustomed to paying the federal government and filing a income tax return on an annual basis with the IRS. And the best way to think about a income tax return is you are declaring to whatever the tax jurisdiction may be, whether it's federal, state, or local, how much income you have made during the year. And then whatever the tax rate that would be applied to that, you then calculate your tax liability. Once you have your liability, then you will look at reconciling that with whatever payments have been issued on the account. Might be that the employer, in the case of an individual who is a what we call a W-2 employee, has payroll deductions for federal tax, state tax, maybe even local tax, and those monies are submitted to those tax jurisdictions throughout the year by that employer. And so we are reconciling the account with looking at what the liability is, subtracting out whatever credits might be available, and then beyond that is what is the balance due? Or if it's not a balance due, is there an overpayment? And if there's an overpayment, then we look at a refund process.
I like refunds, Steve.
Yes, most people do.
Yes.
Either way, you're still paying an income tax, though.
True.
Depending upon where an individual might come from, what state, might provide us a better idea of whether or not they have a very good understanding of the local tax process. And I say that because some individuals who might be relocating from out of state, such as like from Florida or Tennessee or Texas, those states don't even levy a state income tax. And so someone who is, let's say, a Florida resident, they only file one tax return each year with the federal government, and that's it. They don't file with the state on an income tax. They don't file with their local community either. State of Ohio is a little bit unique in that it does allow for not only a state income tax, but the Ohio Constitution does allow for political subdivisions, such as a school district or a municipality, to also levy an income tax. So we refer to that collectively as a local income tax. So you can just imagine a resident of Florida who maybe because of their employment situation relocates to Perrysburg, Ohio, and they're now living in the city of Perrysburg. And now they're paying not only the federal income tax, but they have to file and pay state income tax. And then they have the municipal income tax for the city of Perrysburg. And then there's also the school district income tax as well. So you've gone from filing one return, and now all of a sudden you've got four different tax jurisdictions that you're interacting with and having to file with.
Yes, it is complicated. Once I became a business owner, I actually hired an accountant because that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I didn't know what I was supposed to do anymore. It just got too complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. And we do even see situations where someone who maybe is relocated from out of state and they had a relationship with a tax preparer in their previous hometown. And even the tax preparers from out of state may not be very familiar with the local tax structure. And so, even though you might be relying on a tax preparer and their expertise, depending upon where they're located and how familiar they might be with the local tax structure in the state of Ohio, their expertise might be limited.
When you brought up Florida, the image that came to my mind was our snowbirds from Ohio that go down to Florida part time. Do they have to pay taxes in Florida? No, they don't, right? So they don't
Not
play, they
not
don't.
income tax,
Okay.
but there are other revenue sources that states can use. And so typically your three main revenue sources would be either an income tax, a property tax, or a sales tax. Some states may choose out of those three. They may not levy all three. State of Ohio does have or allow for all three of those taxes to be levied against its residents. So, as a city of Perrysburg resident, I'm subject to sales tax, I'm subject to property tax, and I have income tax not only at the federal level, but at the state level. And because Ohio does allow for the political subdivisions to also levy an income tax, we do have the two local income taxes as well. So we're subject to essentially all of them.
Okay. Now, if somebody only lives in Perrysburg, maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year, and then they spend the rest of their year in Florida because they're what we call a snowbird, how does that work?
With that situation, if an individual has multiple residences, and so maybe they own a home or a condo or something in Florida, but yet they also maintain a home in Perrysburg, that snowbird situation that you refer to. We look at one's domicile to determine what's their true fixed permanent residency. And based upon that, if they are considered domiciled in Florida versus Ohio, then they would not be subject to the Perrysburg city income tax. However, if they're considered domiciled in Perrysburg, then regardless of spending 6 months in Florida, all of their income is going to be taxable to the city of Perrysburg. So, domicile is certainly one of the things that we have to consider when we're trying to determine one's residency. So, if they have multiple residences, things that we might look at are what address do you use on your federal and your state tax returns? Do you use a Florida residence or a Perrysburg residence? Your driver's license. Are you maintaining a Florida driver's license or an Ohio driver's license? Voter registration is another item that we would look to see what's considered your permanent residency. And so, if you can provide documentation that would support that you are domiciled somewhere outside the city of Perrysburg, even though you might have a residency here in the city, if you're considered here on a temporary basis, whether it's a work assignment or just you have two homes, that type of thing, you can be exempt from the municipal income tax.
That sounds so complicated. Would somebody look to maybe make an appointment with you about something like that? I mean, how do people usually sort that out?
Well, certainly a lot of people do like to rely on a tax preparer,
Oh,
so
yeah.
for their expertise. And tax preparers will typically, if they're certainly within the state of Ohio, are going to be much more familiar with the rules within this state. But certainly, our office, that's part of our role. Being a municipal employee, we're referred to as public servants. So we serve the public. And so, anytime somebody might have a question, regardless of whether it's domicile, how to complete a tax form, what's taxable, that type of thing, that's part of our role at the income tax division is to answer those kind of questions and to be a resource to our residents.
Okay.
I refer to our role as 50% technical in nature, where we're posting payments, making deposits, processing tax returns, and the other 50% is customer service, answering those questions, meeting with individuals, either in person, on the phone, answering questions via email, and basically educating about compliance with the income tax ordinance. Because again, if you have someone who's coming from out of state and they're not even familiar that there is a local income tax, it's a lot of education that this person might need to kind of bring them up to speed and make sure that they're compliant.
Thank you for explaining that. Yes, you're a very valuable resource in that you know all of these things. Now, my husband works for First Solar, and I know that there's a number of companies here who have international workers, let's say, from time to time. So they will reside temporarily, maybe for a year or so in Perrysburg, and they maybe don't know about US taxes. I don't know how they learn about that. So for anybody listening to this who I have listeners in Belgium and France and, all kinds of countries. Maybe they're looking to move here. So, what do they do when they want to educate themselves? Should they go to your office or what should they do?
If they want to know information about the municipal income tax, that's what our office handles. That's what we administer. And so we would be a very good resource for that. Beyond that, if we're talking about school district income tax, we're not involved with that. That's actually administered through the state of Ohio. So the Ohio Department of Taxation would be a good resource there, as well as then the state income tax, again, the Ohio Department of Taxation. But I do find that a lot of larger companies, when they are relocating executives for different work assignments, they will typically offer some resources to those employees just so that they are hopefully keeping in compliance with whatever the local regulations might be. And so I do find that some of the larger companies, Fortune 500 companies, typically will have some tax assistance for those individuals as well. So I would think, number one, I would check with my employer if I'm being asked to relocate somewhere for a work assignment. What resources do they provide? But then beyond that, I would say, depending upon where you're getting relocated to, if it's within the state of Ohio and your questions about the state income tax, follow up with the Ohio Department of Taxation. And again, if it's a municipal income tax, follow up with the local municipal jurisdiction.
Great answer. I appreciate that because there may be that one person listening to this who wants to know the answer. I like how you stay in your lane because really that's appropriate. If you know the city of Perrysburg taxes best, then I think that I respect that you're staying in your lane.
Sure. And our office does field a lot of questions sometimes that might be related to something other than income tax. Property tax is a good example. People might have questions about their property tax bill.
Mhm.
They might call our office. We need to refer them to the appropriate jurisdiction, which in the city of Perrysburg would be Wood County. So the Wood County Treasurer's Office is the one that collects my property tax. Anytime I have a question regarding my property tax as a resident of Perrysburg, I follow up with Wood County.
That's great because somebody's probably wondering that too. Like, okay, we've talked about sales tax, property tax, income tax. Who do I talk to about property tax? But yeah, I looked up my own property tax bill prior to this because I was thinking, like, I actually don't really know the difference between these two well. And it does have that pie chart and it shows what you pay into with your property taxes. So that's very helpful.
Yes. And, we talked a little bit about a domicile exemption. So I might be a resident of Perrysburg, but I'm here temporarily, so I can be exempt from paying the municipal income tax. There are other groups of individuals, though, that also could be exempt from municipal income tax. Recently, the state legislature had passed a law which affects all municipalities in the state of Ohio. They kind of set the guardrails as to what municipalities may do in levying an income tax. And they recently made a change, which was effective for tax year 2024, that any minors, so anyone under the age of 18, would be exempt from municipal taxation. So prior to 2024, City of Perrysburg would tax any earned income. So if it was your 16-year-old son working at Vito's Pizza here in town, they had to file and pay income tax on that. However, now with this law changing, it is now minors are exempt. And so that is another example of a population of individuals that would be exempt from our municipal income tax. The next group of individuals that I might mention as well are retirees. So when the city of Perrysburg levies that income tax, it is on earned income or business income. So an individual who is working for an employer and their wages are reported on a W-2 form, which is a federal tax form, that is earned income and that is taxable to the city. If you're not necessarily getting paid on a W-2, you might be getting paid as a non-employee, and that is usually reported on a federal form called a 1099, 1099 miscellaneous, or a 1099 NEC, which stands for non-employee compensation. That type of income is taxable at the municipal level as well. And then business income. So if I am a business owner and I'm running my own business and I file on a federal Schedule C with the IRS, whatever the net profit is for that business is taxable at the municipal level. Or maybe I have a rental property that's also considered a form of a business, and the net rental income or loss in some cases gets reported on a federal Schedule E. Again, the city of Perrysburg looks at that. As well as a partnership. So if I'm in a partnership and I'm earning income that way, and that gets reported on a federal Schedule K1, that also is taxable to the city of Perrysburg. So any of that type of earned income is what gets reported and taxed by the city of Perrysburg. Now, I mentioned retirees are essentially they can be exempt from the municipal income tax if their only source of income are retirement income, such as a pension, a 401k distribution. Social Security benefits are not taxed at the municipal level. Also, Interest and dividends are not taxed at the municipal level. So if a Perrysburg resident is essentially considered retired, they're not working, they don't have a business operation that they're getting any kind of income from, they can file what we call a retiree exemption form with our office, and they would not have to file with us each year and declare that they have no taxable income.
Those are great examples. There's one that I'm going to bring up that may not come to mind because it's kind of rare. I have a child with a disability and he gets SSI, and therefore I don't believe he has to pay municipal taxes.
That would be correct. So SSI would be Social Security benefits. So
Right?
even if you're not retired, if it's any kind of Social Security benefit, that would not be taxable at the municipal level.
I appreciate that because I'm not trying to say that the government's not generous, but it's not much to live off of. So I appreciate that the city of Perrysburg does not tax that.
Sure.
Okay. Those are great examples. Anything else before we move on?
I think I would like to just mention quickly that the tax rate can vary from one jurisdiction to another. And so the federal government is currently using what we would call a graduated tax rate, where it will increase based upon the amount of income someone might report as being taxable.
Mhm.
So it's not a what I would call a flat tax rate, where it's the same rate regardless of the amount of income. The state currently has a graduated tax brackets for different tax rates, and they are now looking. There is some legislation in the state house looking at making it a flat tax rate. Now, when you get to the local level, school districts as well as municipalities, typically they just have what we call a flat tax rate. It's just one rate, regardless of the amount of income. So whether I make $10,000 a year or I make $110,000, whatever the tax rate is, that's what I'm going to be taxed at. So with the city of Perrysburg, our tax rate is 1.5%. That is different than, say, the school district. The school district has a 0.5% income tax rate. The tax rate can differ from one municipality to another. So, a good example would be the city of Toledo. They have a 2.5% income tax rate. City of Perrysburg, similar to like the city of Maumee, they have a 1.5% tax rate. And then Findlay, for example, they have a lower tax rate of 1%. So, again, depending upon where you're located, could affect the amount of tax that you might be paying.
Steve, what do our tax dollars buy us here in Perrysburg?
Well, good question. So I can share with you that our income tax is a significant resource or revenue source for the city of Perrysburg. It generates over 70% of our general revenue fund. General revenue fund is used for a whole host of services that the city provides. Probably some of the things that are maybe most important to us are our safety services, such as our police and our fire. So, most of the budget for those divisions, police and fire, is paid through the general revenue fund. Likewise, beyond that, I think some of the amenities that the city provides, such as our parks, parks are maintained through the income tax and the general revenue fund. The bike trails, the multi-use paths, all of those type of amenities, that's all part of those tax dollars being put to, in my opinion, good use, providing, again, a lot of nice amenities for our residents. The municipal pool, again, I don't go there myself, but I do see a lot of, children seem to enjoy it, and so that's some of our tax dollars at work for us there. Street maintenance and improvements. So annually, the city of Perrysburg does have a certain amount of budgeted monies that they use for resurfacing the streets in the various neighborhoods, and snow removal, garbage pickup, refuse, that type of thing.
Trimming trees, maybe too?
Yes, yes. So even though there's some other levies that generate some dollars, such as for the refuse and or street trees, they do have some levies that are helping to fund that. I know like for the refuse levy, that does not cover more than say 50% of the budget for the sanitation and the pickup of all those recyclables and trash. So the general revenue fund does an awful lot in terms of funding those necessary services.
I was just thinking of brush pickup. Isn't that in the spring? So brush pickups in the spring and then
Yes,
leaf pickups in the fall. Is that
yes,
something that our income tax dollars pay for as well?
definitely. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, which not all communities offer that.
True.
And so I do, again, feel that that's a nice amenity. I certainly take advantage of it on an annual basis as a resident myself.
As long as I can get my butt in gear fast enough. Yes, I take advantage of that as well.
Yes,
I'm one of those people that has at times heard the leaf truck coming down the street and then got my rake out and get as much done as I can.
yes,
I'm one of those people and I'm not the only one.
yes. I do that myself, Kim. Thank you.
We're human.
Yes.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to talk about service wise that our income tax dollars pay for?
I think we've covered most of it, at least the highlights that I think are important.
All right. It's a great list, and I'm happy with the services that we get for our income taxes. My kids have enjoyed the pool for years and years. We actually just bought our pool passes again this month. Even though we don't go very often, we like to support the pool.
Yes. And when our children were younger, we had our annual pool memberships as well. So it was a real treat to see the kids over there.
Yay. Well, I'm glad you have those good memories. And I don't know if you ever took advantage of this, but the last day of the year for the pool, they used to let the dogs come in. Did you ever
Yes,
participate in that?
yes, we did that as well. So that was awesome.
That was
Throw the
awesome.
tennis ball, the dogs would
Yes.
go jumping in.
Oh my gosh, so many dogs, and they were all friendly that I
Yes.
remember. It was great. It smelled amazing too.
Occasional accident.
Well, wet dog smell is what I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
about. But yes, I'm sure the dogs went and, peed on the grass. This is a
Yes.
great conversation, Steve, and I'm going to leave this in because everybody can relate to that that's a dog owner. Dogs mark territory.
Yes.
All right, what have we covered yet that you would like to talk about?
Well, I think one thing I would like to clarify is that the Perrysburg zip code for mailing addresses in Perrysburg encompasses an area broader or wider than just the city of Perrysburg. And so there are townships that are outside the city of Perrysburg that are considered Perrysburg by name because they have a Perrysburg mailing address. And I think that sometimes creates confusion for individuals as well because they think of themselves living in Perrysburg, but yet they may not be in the city of Perrysburg. And if you're not residing in the city of Perrysburg, and you're not considered a resident, then that changes things from a filing requirement with the city of Perrysburg. So that is another common mistake I think that we see for individuals. They're a township resident, but yet they're filing a tax return with the city of Perrysburg, technically in error, not needing to. And so oftentimes there's follow up with our office saying, you're a resident of the township, not within the city. And unless there is something else going on that we're not aware of that requires you to file with us, you may be filing an error. And so we generally come to find out that it's just they think they're in the city when they're really not because of their mailing address.
How does anyone find out if they're in the city or the township when it's not obvious?
Yeah, there's a couple of resources that you can refer someone to. One of them is sponsored by the state of Ohio, and that's called the Tax Finder. It's a website that the state maintains, and you can put in a specific address, and it'll hopefully advise you of what are the local taxes. Now, we do find that the state isn't always as up to date as what might be appropriate. And so the other common resource that our office likes to use is the Wood County Auditor website. And so you can, again, through the Wood County Auditor's website, key in a specific address, or you can look up even by your name, and the parcel that you maybe own will give you some information about that local tax structure, whether it's the Perrysburg School District, or is it the city, or is it Middleton Township, or Perrysburg Township, or something else. And so, again, using some of those resources might help someone to identify, am I really in the city, or am I in the township and maybe not required to file with the city of Perrysburg?
I'm going to throw you a curveball right now. I have a cousin that lives on Wrecker Road with a Perrysburg address, but it's Eastwood Schools. So I'm sure she knows where she pays her taxes too, because she's lived there for more than a decade. But with something like that, I mean, that just seems so complicated. What's your best guess? What would that be?
I
That's not
can't.
even Perrysburg Township, is it?
Well, I was just going to say I don't necessarily. I'm not familiar with Wrecker Road, so I don't believe it's within the city. Just because the
Oh,
name
no.
doesn't even ring a bell.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I would say the if it's it sounds like that would be Wood County if it's in Eastwood Schools. And so again, I would recommend the Wood County Auditor site. You key in that address, and whatever that street address would be, it should tell you whether or not it's township and or is it within another municipality. So maybe not the city of Perrysburg, but if you're close enough and you're in the city of Pemberville or the village of Pemberville, I believe they're not
I
necessarily
believe it is a village,
yeah,
sir.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that Wood County Auditor's website we do utilize quite frequently, and sometimes, like I said, the Ohio State Tax Finder. Sometimes there's some discrepancies; it's not always as up to date, and so maybe a tax preparer has done a search on the finder, and they believe someone's not within the city because the finder doesn't represent that. But yet we look on the Wood County Auditor's website, which tends to be more up to date, and we'll see, yes, they are actually a city resident. So sometimes there can be discrepancies between the two. And so we do typically rely on the Wood County Auditor's website more often than not.
It sounds like just getting things set up for the first time when you do your taxes in that new address, when you're not sure, it's the hardest part.
Yes.
Yep.
And the other thing I would encourage individuals is make sure that you talk with that local tax jurisdiction. So if it's the city of Perrysburg and you know you're a resident of Perrysburg, come in and talk to our office if you have questions. Don't necessarily just assume that either your tax preparer knows everything that you need to do, but if you have questions, if you get a notice from our office, you get a letter from our office, and you don't understand the information, again, that's what we're there for as public servants is to assist you and answer any questions you might have. So utilize your local tax office as a resource as well.
Thank you for talking about leaning on your local tax jurisdiction. But what if you do live in the township? Like, how do you communicate with your equivalent in Perrysburg Township?
Now, the townships in the state of Ohio don't typically levy an income tax. They don't generally have the authority to do that through the state constitution. However, they may partner with a neighboring community, such as the city of Perrysburg or a neighboring village or city, and they can form what they call a JEDS, where it's an acronym for like a joint economic development zone. And so then you have two jurisdictions coming together to form one tax jurisdiction. And so from that standpoint, typically a township itself doesn't levy an income tax, but they might partner with a neighboring community to create that tax jurisdiction.
When I asked for the equivalent in Perrysburg Township, it sounds like there isn't one. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, they do have a governing body, and so there are, the township commissioners, and they do have administrative offices. So just like there is a city administrator, there is a township administrator, and just like we have, various police and fire services, the township also provides similar services from that standpoint. It's just that they get their funding through different sources, whether it be property taxes or revenue sharing from the state and or county through sales tax, things of that nature. They just don't levy an income tax. If you're unsure, though, again, you could always just call the administrative office for the township and you could inquire, do you levy an income tax?
Do you happen to know if Perrysburg Township levies an income tax?
They do not.
They do not. Okay. I should have just led with that. Thank you very much. I'm keeping that in because you know what? If I'm asking the question, somebody else probably has the same
Sure.
question in their mind as well. And especially for somebody thinking of moving here, this is the info that they want. So thank you
Mhm.
for sharing it.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah. You have so much great information. I know that when we were talking before we pressed record, there were a number of topics that we could have talked about. So, what have we not gotten to that my audience might be interested in?
One thing I would probably like to cover is just how, let's say you've determined you are a resident, you have earned income, so you need to file with the city. How do you go about doing that? So some of the resources that the city can provide is that we do provide on our website a e-file process. So someone can electronically file their income tax return with the city, and it does require to set up basically your user credentials. You have to create that username and password and things of that nature. But once you've done that, you can, on an annual basis, file with the city electronically. That website even provides an opportunity for you to upload documents that support that tax filing. So once you've declared your income and it calculates what that tax liability is, and you deduct out whatever your credits might be, whether it's for withholdings, things of that nature, estimated payments you've made, and you've now got a balance due, you're ready to, basically submit that return. You also have the ability to upload those supporting documents like your W-2s. Or if you're a business owner, you might have a Schedule C that you file at the federal level. We ask for copies of those supporting documents. And so that tool does provide the resident the opportunity to file that return electronically, upload their supporting documentation. Beyond that, if you are not necessarily familiar with using the e-file system, if you need assistance, you can always call our office. We'll be more than happy to assist you with that. But beyond that, we do have tax forms available for download off of our website. They are what we call fill-in PDF forms. So you can download it, enter the information on your computer, save the form. You can print it, mail it in. You can actually come into our office and file in person, however it might be. So we do have the forms available. Certainly, we're not requiring individuals to use Perrysburg tax forms. And so if you're using a tax preparer, most of the times they have their own software that will generate a tax form for you or tax return. They fill it all out, you sign it, you mail it in. And so we accept what we call generic tax forms.
And that is what I file.
Yes. So
Yes.
depending upon who you're using for your tax services, they may have different forms, that type of thing, but it's going to be the same information. It's just on a different form. And then lastly, we do offer assistance to residents with completing their tax forms. And so if you download the form, you're looking at it and you say, I just don't understand what even box one is looking for. You need assistance. Again, that's what we're there for. And so you can either call or you can come in, and we do even schedule appointments. So if you want that little extra hand holding through the process, our office will provide that as well.
Thank you for that service that you offer. I know that when we used to do our taxes on our own, we used TurboTax for federal and state, but then we had to figure out the local, and it was fairly straightforward. But again, ever since I became a business owner, I need some help. So my accountant does the generic form thing, and then stamps are getting expensive, Steve. So I would drive it on over to the city's building and I just drop it off there.
Yes, and one of the things I'll mention is that our office is only open from Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And I know a lot of times people are busy during those hours and they can't necessarily come down to our office, but we do have a secure drop slot that is available off of the side of the municipal building located within the atrium area. So if you come into the municipal building, there is a brick wall along the side of the building that does have this secure drop slot. It's specific for the income tax office. So you don't want to put anything else for city business. You don't want to put your utility payment in there. It's just for the income tax, but it is secure. So none of the other divisions of the city would have access to that secure, confidential information. And so that is actually open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you know something is due by a certain date and it falls on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever, and you're scrambling to get something in, you can run it down at 11:59 p.m. and drop it off in the secure drop slot.
That's right by the Perrysburg Police Division's door, right? I mean, like it's
Correct.
across from it.
Yeah, so the municipal complex has what we call the municipal building, which is right on the corner of West Indiana and Walnut Street. And then as you would say park on Walnut Street, there is a side entrance off of Walnut that goes right into the atrium area. And then the atrium connects also to the police division. So, and the police division does operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, hence the reason why the atrium is open 24 hours a day. And so that secure drop slot is available throughout any time of the day.
Good to know. I actually have never looked for that slot, so thanks for the heads up.
Yes.
Anything else that you would like to cover?
One thing I think that creates some confusion is the idea of TurboTax or other self assisted tax preparation software.
Hmm.
And most of those national software companies, such as TurboTax or TaxAct, things of that nature, they have created an electronic interface with some of those larger tax jurisdictions, whether it's federal government or maybe the states. And so you will typically see that when you use TurboTax, it'll file, again, if you're a Perrysburg resident, it'll file three of those four tax returns for you: the federal, state, and the school district, which again is administered by the state, not our office. Those all get filed electronically. If it does create a municipal tax return for you, it is not going to electronically file it. So then you're left with somehow preparing, printing, mailing, dropping off, and or using the e-file site off of the city website to complete your return electronically. But I think people don't necessarily understand that. Sometimes they just assume that because I've used TurboTax, it's taken care of everything for me. And so, 6 months later, all of a sudden now they're getting a delinquency notice from the city of Perrysburg, and they're saying, but wait, I've already filed. Here they come to find out that they filed with the federal, the state, and the school district, and it did not file a city return. So I think it's important that people kind of keep that in mind. And again, use the city's income tax division as a resource if you need any assistance with completing that fourth component of your filing requirement.
Ooh, delinquency. That's kind of a scary thought. But
Sure.
just one of those letters, delinquency letters, would set me straight like, oh, I need to look into this.
Yeah. And I think another item that frequently comes up with our office is individuals who don't necessarily understand or appreciate the idea of estimated income tax payments. Now, you as a business owner, you might have a little better understanding of that, but for a traditional, resident that maybe works for an employer and they have taxes withheld from their payroll, they get that W 2 at the end of the year, and they maybe have the federal tax being withheld, the state tax being withheld. Maybe they even have the school district tax being withheld. Well, income tax is best to be thought of as a pay as you go program, meaning that you're not necessarily just going to pay one lump sum at the end of the year. It should be paid at least on a quarterly
Quarterly.
basis throughout the year.
Mm.
And so for those other jurisdictions, your employer is withholding the federal tax, your employer is withholding the state tax. And chances are they're submitting that maybe on a monthly basis to those tax jurisdictions so that at the end of the year, when you file that federal return, you declare that income, you've got your tax liability, you deduct those withholding credits, and you may have some incremental amount due, or maybe you've overpaid and you've got the refund. But if they're not withholding the city of Perrysburg, then it becomes the responsibility of the taxpayer to make estimated tax payments to the jurisdiction. And that's true across all tax jurisdictions. It's not just the city of Perrysburg. So if your employer is not withholding enough federal income tax for the IRS, when you file a return, if you owe too much, you can get penalized because you don't have enough withholdings. And so the same thing would happen at the state level, same thing can happen at the local level. And so I do try to impress upon people that if your employer will withhold the Perrysburg city tax on your behalf, that's the ideal situation. The employer is just deducting it with each pay period, and they're submitting it to the jurisdiction on at least a monthly or quarterly basis. But if they're not going to withhold Perrysburg city tax, then it becomes your responsibility as the taxpayer to submit that tax at a minimum on a quarterly basis. So, hypothetically, I make $100,000 in the year. I have to report that on my return to the City of Perrysburg. Our 1.5% tax rate means I owe $1,500 to the city. If my employer isn't withholding that money from my payroll, and I just wait to the end of the year and I make a payment of $1,500 to the City of Perrysburg, I could be subject to penalty and interest in that situation. And so I should be making estimated tax payments throughout the year so that when I get to the end of the year, I've already paid most of that $1,500, if not all of it. And so again, I'm essentially filing a return in April and I'm saying this is how much tax I owe, here's how much I've paid in, and here's that incremental balance due, if any. But I think a lot of people don't appreciate that just because they're accustomed to the employer withholding for these other jurisdictions, and maybe they're not withholding for their municipality. And so, even though they don't have to do estimated tax payments with the federal government, they might still have to do it at the local.
Man, being a grown up's hard, Steve.
I would agree. But as a business owner, I think you're probably accustomed to that because there is no withholding on business income. And so you now are responsible for making those quarterly estimated tax payments, whether it's for the federal government, state government, or the local.
My tax preparer is wonderful. She even gives me little coupons.
Vouchers,
Yeah,
yes.
vouchers, and it's got the date on it, so I just program it into my calendar. I use Mac products or Apple products, so yeah, I just put it into my calendar and it reminds me. And I guess as we record this, it's what, June 18th. I just sent in a quarterly payment
Correct.
over the weekend.
Yes. Yes. And our office does the same thing. And so, because each taxpayer's circumstances can be unique, some have withholding and they don't need to make estimated tax payments, whereas some maybe don't have the withholding and they do. So we can't just say to everybody, you have to submit estimated tax payments. It's based upon an individual's circumstances. And so if your particular circumstances are such that you don't have the withholding, come in and talk to us, and we will be able to provide you not only those vouchers, we can explain the due dates, we can even help calculate what your estimated tax would be, just to again make sure that you are being compliant and therefore not subject to any penalties and interest.
Thank you for talking about all the things that your office can do to help taxpayers.
Yeah, and that's again what we're here for as public servants. And so I think it would be helpful for people to also know how to get a hold of our office.
Mhm.
So we are available by phone and likewise via email. And we do have our website, and there are forms and information available on the website as well. So hopefully you'll be able to provide some of that information as well to anybody who might be listening in.
I will put the phone number, the email address, and the website in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com.
That'd be great.
Yes, my pleasure. Yeah. Well, you've been very helpful with all of this information. I've gotten a lot out of this, and I think
Oh,
that
good.
this episode will be a good resource for current and future Perrysburg residents.
That's my hope.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else as we wrap this up?
I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. So I don't have anything additional that I think would be helpful at this point. But again, I always encourage people when you do have questions, seek some resources. Come and talk to our office if you have any questions.
Right. If you can't answer the question, you may be able to provide a resource. I'm sure there's all kinds of frequently asked questions, and you're no stranger to redirecting people, right?
Yeah, yes. And I will share with you that if you just ignore the situation and you continue to get notices, eventually those catch up and it just kind of becomes more and more of an issue. And so we like to try to, again, encourage people to come in and get compliant with things sooner rather than later so that we're kind of minimizing what kind of impact that has on the individual overall.
Good looking out. I'll just ask you one little bonus question here. I know that you said that you've been the income tax commissioner in Perrysburg for 14 years now, right?
That is correct, yes.
All right. What's next for you?
Actually, I am scheduled for retirement at the end of the summer.
At this summer?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I'm so happy I got to interview you before you retired.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we are in the process. The city is looking to still maintain the internal staff to administer the municipal income tax. And so we are in the process of basically backfilling this position for income tax commissioner.
Wow. Well, I am so happy for you. I want to retire someday too.
I'm
So
sure you will.
I love hearing that people retire, when they're young enough to enjoy it.
Yes, it'll
Yes.
come soon enough. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe faster than you expect.
Well, gosh, when we sat down with our investment guy many years ago, we said 55 was our number. So we've been trying to invest and plan as if we are going to retire at 55.
That's awesome. That would be great.
Yeah. And if you don't mind my asking, what's the number one thing you're looking forward to in your retirement?
I do have some volunteer items that I'm interested in pursuing. So um,
Nice.
part of that's just my spiritual well-being as well.
I love to volunteer too. So much respect to you. Thank you very much for sharing all of your tax knowledge here on the Perrysburg podcast, and best of luck to you in retirement. Enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Kim. It's been an enjoyable conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks again to Steve Bronder for being my guest on episode 106 of the Perrysburg podcast. I learned a lot from Steve during our interview, like that some states don't have a state income tax. Who knew? I didn't know that. And I didn't know about the after hours tax form drop off slot in the atrium of the municipal building. What I usually do is I go in during normal business hours, and I believe there's just a collection box next to the security guard, and I just put it in there. I also learned that if residents need help with their taxes, for example, they need vouchers for their quarterly taxes, you can go on into the City of Perrysburg's income tax division there at the municipal building and ask for help. And one last thing that I learned is that you can e file your municipal income tax return. Believe that I mentioned during our interview that I just have my tax preparer create some generic form and we go ahead and turn that in there in the atrium. One last thing before I wrap this up, I just want to say that I really did not know that Steve was retiring this summer. So that was a surprise that was not planned. I thought that was very cool. When I interviewed Steve in mid June, I did not know that he was retiring. So thank you very much for your service, Steve, and congratulations again on your upcoming retirement. I am sure that it is well deserved. Thanks for your 14 years of service here in Perrysburg. That's all I have today. Thank you very much for listening to episode 106 of the Perrysburg Podcast. The show notes are on perrysburgpodcast.com. In those show notes, you will find the website, email address, and phone number for the City of Perrysburg's Income Tax Division, the Wood County Auditor's website, the Ohio Tax Finder website, and a link to sign up for the Perrysburg Podcast's weekly newsletter. You sign up, and then I'll email you every Friday when a new episode comes out. Everything you need, all those links, they're in the show notes for episode 106 on perrysburgpodcast.com. Go ahead and share this episode with your friends and neighbors and follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks so much for listening today, and I'll talk to you next week.